Hello everyone, it's Aziz here today. Hope you're doing great. If you're new to the channel, please go ahead and subscribe and then follow me on as we're going to be doing this hands-on lecture for AWS VPC. If you missed the previous lecture on VPC, please ensure to visit that particular lecture and also the previous lectures on IAM and S3. So without further ado, let's go ahead and look at the hands-on section for AWS Virtual Private Clouds. So last time we were looking at how to work with VPCs, and today we're going to continue from here by doing the hands-on. So let's go ahead and add our AWS cloud. So we're working with the AWS cloud, and then we are going to add a region because you know, when you're creating your VPC is always sitting in a particular region. So let's add a region. I'm going to make this a little bit bigger up. Let's see. Okay. Yeah, a little bit up. Now let's add our VPC. So we're going to add a VPC. And for our VPC, we are going to be using the CIDR. Let's use 10.0.0.0/16. So this is going to be the CIDR of our VPC. So like we said last time, the first thing that we need to do is to create subnets, right? So we need to take this CIDR and we are going to break it down to what we call sub networks. So, and how can we do this? We can easily do this by using a free tool that is called VPC CIDR divider. So you can use the CIDR divider. So just go ahead, search for CIDR divider, and then you want to open the virtual CIDR divider, and then here we are going to paste our IP address, so 1000, and remove the /16, and then we are going to do update. And now down here you see this, you want to divide this up, so I'm going to do divide, and you can see now we are going to have this. So we are going to create a VPC with this particular CIDR and with these two subnetworks. So our first network is going to be the 10.000/17, and then we're going to have the 10.0.128.0/17. So this is going to be the CIDRs of our subnets. So we are going to have two subnets. So let's add the zones, because you know, in your VPC you have availability zones. So we're going to have two availability zones, and in each of our availability zones we are going to have a single subnet. So we are going to add let's say subnet, and we are going to add one private subnet. We are going to add one private subnet inside here. Okay, we're going to add a subnet here, and then here we are going to add a public subnet. Like that up. Okay, so let's go ahead and go to AWS and look at how to create this structure. So first I'm heading to my AWS management console, and to navigate to VPC I go up to the search bar and I just simply search for VPC. So I'm going to VPCs. So after that you want to go to your VPCs. I'm going to switch the region, so we can have a region where we don't have anything running. So I'm going to, let's check Ohio. We have another one here. Let's go to Oregon. Okay, so let's do create VPC. And what you want to do here is provide the name of your VPC. So let's simply call this VPC A. And then we are going to be using IPv4 CIDR manual input. So let's go ahead and input the CIDR of our VPC. So we are saying we want to work with a 10.0.0.0/16. That is the CIDR of our VPC. I'm going to keep the other ones as default, no IPv6 CIDRs. Tenancy is going to be default, and the only thing you want to do is create the VPC. So that is it. So first we have done what? We have created our VPC using our particular CIDR that we wanted to use, right? So now let's go ahead and create our subnets. Okay, so let's go down to subnets, and we are going to click on create subnet. And before you're creating the subnet, first you're going to select the VPC where you want to create your subnets, right? So let's do VPC A is the VPC we want to use. The subnet name, so we are going to create, let's call it VPC A public subnet. And then let's select the availability zone. We are going to keep this one in US West 2A. And then what is going to be the CIDR of this particular subnet? So we already have our CIDR here. So we just copy this up, Control C, come back here like that. And then we go down. And then here we can just add multiple subnets. So instead of going back only to come back in and create another one, to save us time, let's just do again, add new subnet. And then we do VPC A private subnet. So we are going to create this one in the other availability zone, US West 2B. And then the CIDR of this subnet is going to be this. Copy. Like that, and then create subnet. Okay, so we have created two subnets, one public and one private. And like we said last time, the fact that I have named it public and private doesn't mean that it is already public. Okay, so for a subnet to be public, first you need to create a route table like we said, and you need to create an internet gateway, and then you're going to associate the public subnet to the public route table, and then you add a route to the public route table that is pointing to the internet through the internet gateway. That is how you're going to make a particular subnet public, right? So next thing you want to do is to add our route tables, right? So let's go ahead to route tables. I'm going to create route table, and we'll create two route tables. So we're going to create VPC. You're going to create VPC A public route table. I'll copy this for later, and let's select the VPC A, and let's create route table. So let's create again the second route table. We want to create VPC A private route table, and let's select VPC A. Let's create the route table. So now we have created our two route tables, the public route table and the private route table. The next thing we want to do is to associate the public subnet to the public route table and associate the private subnet to the private route table, right? Makes sense. So let's select the public route table, go to subnet associations and edit subnet associations. You want to select the public subnet and then click on save associations. So we have associated the public route table to the public subnet. Now let's associate the private route table to the private subnet. I select the private route table, subnet associations, go to edit subnet associations, and then select the private subnet and save associations. Now we have added our private subnet to the private route table. Next thing, we need to create an internet gateway for communication. So before our VPC is able to communicate with the internet, we need to have an internet gateway. So we need to create an internet gateway and attach this internet gateway to our VPC like this. So we are going to back to the console. We are going to internet gateways, create internet gateway, and we want to create an internet gateway called VPC A internet gateway, and create internet gateway. After you create the internet gateway, now you need to attach it to the VPC. So I click on attach up here, or I can go to actions and click on attach to VPC. And then I select the VPC, which is VPC A, and then attach internet gateway. Now we have attached our internet gateway to our VPC. Now, for our public subnet that we want to be able to communicate with the internet gateway, how are we going to ensure this communication? We need to add a route to the route table of the public subnet that is going to be pointing to the internet through the internet gateway. So we want to do this to point to the internet through the internet gateway. So we are going back here. We are going back to route tables. We are going to select the public route table. Then we are going to routes, and we are going to do edit routes. Whenever you're creating a route has what we call the destination and the target, right? And our destination is the internet, and the CIDR for the internet is 00000/0. That is the IP address of the public internet, right? 0.0.0.0/0. And how do we want to create and how do we want to target the internet? Through the internet gateway. So I come down here and I select internet gateway. And the particular internet gateway that is attached to my VPC is this one. So I select VPC A internet gateway. Then after that, I save changes. And now our public subnet is now actually public because it now has a route that is pointing to the internet through the internet gateway. The next thing now is how do we add a NAT gateway for our resources that are going to reside in the private subnet and you want them to be able to communicate with the internet. How are we going to do it? So we want to add a NAT gateway. So we're going to NAT gateways. We want to create a NAT gateway. And we're going to do my NAT gateway here. And then we're going to do VPC A NAT gateway. Let's call it NAT gateway. And then a NAT gateway is supposed to reside in a public subnet, right? So I'm going to select VPC A public subnet, and it's going to be a public NAT, and then create NAT gateway. Sorry, we need to select IP, elastic IP. So I'm going to click on allocate elastic IP here. So the IP address will automatically be created. One thing, when you have elastic IP addresses, they are billable. So when you finish this lab, you want to go ahead and destroy it immediately. If not, you're going to be billed for the elastic IP addresses because they create what we call static IP addresses, right? So elastic IP addresses are billable, so you need to remove those addresses after the lab. So create NAT gateway. And after that, the next thing, how do we associate now this NAT gateway and create the route that is leading to the internet gateway through the NAT gateway? So we go to route tables. We are going to the private route table, and then we go to routes, and then we're going to do edit routes. And we want to add a new route that is going to be moving to the internet, and this time is going to be moving through the NAT gateway. So like this, VPC A NAT gateway, and save changes. And now we are done. We have done everything communication. Our public subnet is able to communicate with the internet. Our private subnets are also able to reach out to the internet for maybe operating system updates and patches. And now the next thing that we want to do is to look at how do we do VPC pairing. If you have a couple of VPCs, you want to pair them together to be able to ensure communication between the resources across these VPCs. How do you do a pairing connection? So let's go ahead and create a second VPC and then do a pairing connection between these two VPCs. So what do we want to do? We want to create a second VPC. So we are going to create a second VPC. Let's do region. Still, anyways, we are going to do this in the same region. So I'll just extend this up like this. And then we're saying VPC. And in this second VPC, we are going to do the same thing. We are going to add availability zones. And in our availability zones, we are going to add a public subnet and a private subnet. Like this. And then after, we are going to create a pairing connection between them. It's called a VPC pairing connection. like this. I'll just do this to indicate the peering connection. So this is what we want to achieve. So let's go ahead and create our second VPC. For our second VPC, we are going to use, we can use the 20. We can use 20.00/16 like this. And that is how we are going to have it. So let's go ahead and create this, our VPC. So we are going back to your VPCs. Create VPC. The name of our VPC is called VPCB. And then we go down the side of the VPC like this, /16. And that is it. You click create VPC. Now we have created the VPC. Let's do the other things real quick because we already know how to do them. So I'm going to subnet. I'm going to select VPC, VPCB. And I'm going to do VPCB public subnet. And then the availability zone is 2A. And the CIDR of this guy here is going to be this one. And then add new subnet. Copy this one here. Paste this here and change this one to private. And the CIDR of the private subnet is going to be this. Copy, up, 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 like this. And now let's create the subnet. So we have created our two subnets, VPCB private subnet and VPCA public subnet. Now let's create the route tables. So create route table. And we want to create VPCB public route table. Copy that for later and select VPCB and then create route table. And then back to route tables, we are creating the second route table, VPCB private route table. Select VPCB and then create route table. So now that we have created the two route tables, let's go ahead and do the association. So I want to associate VPCB public route table to the public subnet of VPCB. So I'm going to subnet associations, edit subnet associations, and VPCB public subnet and associations. And I want to go to VPCB private subnet and associate, subnet associations, edit subnet associations, and VPCB private subnet and save associations. And after that, we are done. Next thing, we want to create an internet gateway and attach the internet gateway to our VPCB. So I'm going to internet gateways, create internet gateway, and then back to VPC. I'm saying VPCB internet gateway, and then create internet gateway. And now attach to VPC, and then I select VPCB and attach internet gateway. Next thing, route table configuration. I want to go to the VPCB public route table, and then I'm going to routes, and I want to edit routes and add a route that is pointing to the internet through the internet gateway, up, 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 save changes. And then same for the NAT gateway. I go to NAT gateways, create NAT gateway, up, and I'm saying VPCB NAT gateway. Then I select the public subnet of VPCB, VPCB public subnet. And then it's going to be public. And then I want to do allocate elastic IP addresses and create NAT gateway. Next, let's do the NAT gateway route configuration. So I'm going to VPCB private subnet, VPCB private route table, and I'm going to open the routes and edit routes. I want to add a route that is leading to the internet through the NAT gateway. NAT gateway. Select the NAT gateway and save changes. Now, guys, we are finally done. We have done the same configuration. Our VPCA is the same like our VPCB. Now we want to do the peering connection for them to be able to communicate together. So I'm going to route tables. What do? We are going to VPC peering connections. We create peering connection, and we are going to create the peering connection. The peering connection here, we can just say VPC. We can say VPCA to VPCB connection. and then you go down the requester. When you're creating a peering connection, one of the VPCs is supposed to request and the other one is going to accept. So we can just say VPC A is going to request and then select another VPC to pair with. So if it's in the same account, you select my account, and if it's in another account, then you select another account. So we're dealing with the same account, so we're going to leave it in my account. So in the same region, yes. If it's a different region in the same account, then you select another region. Now we're dealing with the same region, so we select the acceptor VPC, which is VPC B. After that, you create peering connection. Now we have created the peering connection. Now we need to accept it, right? So let's go back to peering connections. And we have this peering connection that is pending acceptance. If you go down here, you will see accept request. So select the peering connection, go to actions, and then accept the request. Accept request, and then accept the request. Now that you have accepted your request, the peering connection has been created. But that is not all. Even after you create a peering connection, it doesn't mean that the resources are going to automatically communicate, because remember, what enables communication between your resources is what is in the route tables. So if you want your resources in VPC A that are in the route table want to communicate with VPC B in the same route route table, then you need to do what? You need to add a route in the route table in VPC A that is pointing to this particular VPC peering connection, that is pointing to the CIDR of VPC B through the particular peering connection. What does this mean? It means that if I have my resources here in the public subnet of VPC A, for example, then if I want this public subnet to communicate with this other public subnet inside here, then I need to add a route to the route table of VPC A, okay, that is pointing to the CIDR of VPC B or directly to the CIDR of the subnet where VPC B is, where this particular subnet is, that is going to go through the peering connection. So let's go to the route table of this particular subnet. So we are going back to VPC and back to route tables. You want to go to the VPC B public route table, and then in this route table, what we want to do is, well, let's do this between the private subnets, right? Let's do VPC A private route table, and let's go to the route. What do we want to do? We want to edit the routes. So what we want to do is to enable communication between the resources that are in our private subnets. We want cross communication between these two guys. Like this is what we want to do. So I'm going to VPC A route table. I'm going to add a route, and I want to add a route that is going to be pointing to the CIDR of VPC B. And what is the CIDR of VPC B? Is 20.0.0.0//16, and it's going to go through the peering connection. So I select peering connection, and then I select the peering connection, and then save changes. Now that I have done the peering connection, this is a one-way peering connection, which means that only the resources here are going to be able to send a request here. If you want this guy here to also be able to send a request for backward compatibility, you want the same thing this way, then you need to do the same thing. You need to go to the private route table of this guy and also add the same route. So we are going, that is pointing this time around to VPC A. So we are going back to route tables, and then now we are going to VPC B private route table. And then we want to go to add routes, and then we are doing add routes. We want to add a route that is pointing to the 10.0.0 because we are pointing now to VPC A, right? 10.0.0/16. And it's going to go through the peering connection, and like this is going to go through the peering connection. So we have successfully done the peering. Let's save changes. And that is it. Now our VPC peering is done, and if we have a virtual machine in this subnet and another virtual machine in this subnet, they will be able to communicate with each other without going through the internet. Everything is going to be through the peering connection. Okay, so that is how you do VPC peering connections. So when we are going to discuss about Elastic Compute Cloud EC2, then we are going to test to see if this communication is actually working very well. So thank you very much, and I'll see you in the next lecture where we're going to discuss about AWS EC2. If you did like this video, please go ahead and like. Also subscribe to our YouTube channel so that you can get notified anytime we post a new video. Thank you very much, and bye.